Chapter 1. Suburban Bliss. Introduction to Sarah Henderson. Sarah Henderson lived a seemingly perfect life in the serene suburbs of Greenfield. The picturesque neighborhood, with its neatly trimmed lawns and tree-lined streets, was the ideal backdrop for Sarah's daily routine. Her days were a delicate balance of personal and professional commitments, all of which she managed with an air of effortless grace. Daily routine. Sarah's mornings began early, with the sun just starting to rise over the rooftops. She would quietly slip out of bed, careful not to wake her husband Tom, and head to the kitchen. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as she prepared breakfast for her family. Her two children, Jake and Lily, would soon be up, their sleepy faces gradually lighting up at the sight of pancakes or cereal. After sending the kids off to school, Sarah transitioned into her role as a freelance graphic designer. Her home office was a small, cozy room, filled with sketches, color swatches, and her trusty computer. Clients loved her creativity and reliability, making her a sought-after designer despite the competitive market. Tom Henderson. Tom, Sarah's husband, was a senior executive at a prominent marketing firm. His job was demanding, but he always made time for his family. Tall, with an easy smile and a knack for storytelling, Tom was the epitome of a family man, or so it seemed. He was the kind of person who attended every soccer game and school play, earning the admiration of both neighbors and colleagues. Introduction to Emily Turner. Life in Greenfield took an interesting turn with the arrival of Emily Turner. Emily, a vibrant and attractive woman in her early 30s, had moved into the neighborhood a year ago after her divorce. Her presence was immediately felt. She was outgoing, with a warm personality that drew people in. Her laughter often echoed down the street, a stark contrast to the otherwise quiet suburb. Friendship blossoms. Sarah and Emily quickly became fast friends. Their bond was forged over morning coffee sessions and evening wine gatherings. They shared stories of their lives, their dreams, and their fears. Emily's spirited nature was a refreshing change for Sarah, who found in her a confidant and ally. Emily, on the other hand, admired Sarah's ability to juggle her various responsibilities with such poise. In the mornings, after the children had been sent off to school and the husbands to work, Sarah and Emily would meet for coffee. They would sit on Sarah's porch, enjoying the tranquility of the morning while discussing everything from current events to personal anecdotes. In the evenings, after a long day, they would sometimes unwind with a glass of wine, their laughter mingling with the twilight. Greenfield's social fabric. Greenfield itself was a community that thrived on social connections. Block parties, bake sales, and neighborhood watch meetings were common, and everyone knew everyone else's business. This tight-knit community was both a blessing and a curse. It provided a support network, but also meant that privacy was a rare commodity. Sarah and Emily's friendship did not go unnoticed. Their camaraderie became a topic of conversation among the other residents. Some admired their close bond, while others whispered about the frequency of their meetings. Yet Sarah and Emily paid little attention to the gossip, cherishing the companionship they had found in each other. Underlying tensions. Beneath the surface of this suburban bliss, however, lay undercurrents of tension. Sarah sometimes felt the strain of maintaining her perfect image, the pressures of managing her home, excelling in her career, and being a devoted wife and mother often left her exhausted. Tom's job, though rewarding, demanded long hours and frequent travel, which sometimes left Sarah feeling isolated. Emily, despite her cheerful demeanor, was still recovering from the emotional scars of her divorce. She often masked her pain with humor and a busy social life, but in quieter moments, the sadness was palpable. Her move to Greenfield was as much about starting fresh as it was about escaping her past. Conclusion. As the chapter closes, the picture of suburban bliss is painted with both light and shadows. Sarah's seemingly perfect life, Tom's dedication, and Emily's vibrant presence create a dynamic interplay of relationships and emotions. The serene suburb of Greenfield, with its close-knit community, serves as the perfect stage for the unfolding drama. Chapter 2. The First Signs. New developments. Sarah Henderson's life, which once felt like a well-orchestrated symphony, began to show discordant notes. It started with small, almost imperceptible changes in Tom's behavior. Tom, always consistent and predictable, began to exhibit subtle differences that set off alarms in Sarah's mind. Tom's new cologne. The first sign was Tom's new cologne. Tom had worn the same cologne for years, a familiar scent that Sarah had grown accustomed to. Suddenly, he came home smelling different. The new scent was stronger, more pronounced, and completely unlike anything he had worn before. When Sarah asked about it, Tom casually mentioned that it was a gift from a colleague, something he decided to try on a whim. Sarah accepted his explanation, although a small part of her couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Late-night meetings. Then came the late-night meetings. Tom's job as a senior executive often required long hours, but lately the late nights had become more frequent. He would call or text, explaining that he had to stay late at the office to finalize a campaign or attend a last-minute meeting. Sarah, always supportive, reassured him that she understood the demands of his job. But as the late nights continued, she began to wonder if there was more to it than just work. Unfamiliar perfume. The next clue was more personal. One evening, as Sarah hugged Tom after a particularly long day, she caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume on his clothes. It was subtle, but distinctly different from her own fragrance. She tried to convince herself that it was nothing. Perhaps a coworker had given him a hug, or he had brushed past someone in the elevator. Yet, the scent lingered in her thoughts, feeding her growing suspicions. Discovery in the living room. The final straw came one evening while Sarah was tidying the living room. The house was quiet, the children asleep, and Tom still at work. As she fluffed the cushions on the couch, a strand of long blonde hair caught her eye. Sarah's hair was dark brown, and neither of her children had blonde hair. Puzzled, she picked up the strand and examined it closely. Her mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe it belonged to a guest from one of their frequent gatherings, or perhaps it was left behind by one of the children's friends. Despite her attempts to rationalize the discovery, the doubts in her mind were becoming harder to ignore. The strand of hair felt like a tangible piece of evidence, a clue that something was amiss. Sarah's thoughts began to spiral, replaying every interaction, every moment of hesitation in Tom's responses, and every unexplained detail. Internal struggle. Sarah's internal struggle intensified. She wanted to trust Tom, to believe that her suspicions were unfounded. They had built a life together, shared dreams, and faced challenges side by side. The idea of betrayal was too painful to contemplate. Yet, the signs were there, each one chipping away at the foundation of her trust. She found herself analyzing everything. Tom's body language, his tone of voice, even the way he looked at her. She started to question her own perceptions, wondering if she was being overly paranoid or if her instincts were trying to tell her something important. The tension between her desire to trust and her fear of betrayal was almost unbearable. Seeking answers. Determined to find clarity, Sarah decided to pay closer attention to Tom's behavior. She began to take note of the small details, the way he dressed, the conversations he had on the phone, and the places he said he was going. She didn't want to confront him without concrete evidence, fearing that it might lead to a confrontation based on mere suspicions. As the days passed, Sarah's vigilance grew. She watched and waited, hoping to find either reassurance or confirmation of her fears. The serene suburbs of Greenfield, once a place of comfort and security, now felt like a stage where an unseen drama was unfolding. The sense of suburban bliss that she had cherished seemed to be slipping away, replaced by an undercurrent of uncertainty and doubt. Conclusion: the first signs of trouble in Sarah's seemingly perfect life were subtle, yet significant. Tom's new cologne, the late-night meetings, the unfamiliar perfume, and the strand of blonde hair all pointed to a mystery that needed unraveling. As Sarah grappled with her suspicions, the harmony of her suburban life began to fracture, setting the stage for the unfolding revelations and challenges ahead. Chapter 3. Unearthing the Truth, Heightened Awareness. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah became increasingly observant of Tom's behavior. The nagging feeling of unease transformed into a relentless pursuit of answers. She noticed how Tom had become more protective of his phone, a device he once casually left lying around. Now he took it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. When it rang, he would often step into another room to take the call, speaking in hushed tones. The night of discovery. One fateful night, as Tom slept soundly beside her, Sarah decided it was time to confront her fears. Her hands trembled as she carefully reached for Tom's phone. She knew his passcode, an old anniversary date they rarely mentioned. With a deep breath, she unlocked the phone and began to scan through his messages. Her heart pounded as she scrolled past mundane conversations with colleagues and friends. Then she saw them, a series of intimate texts between Tom and Emily. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. The messages were explicit and affectionate, detailing secret meetings and stolen moments. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Her husband and her best friend were having an affair. The weight of betrayal. The betrayal was profound. Emily, who had been a constant presence in her life, sharing laughter and tears over coffee and wine, was now revealed as the other woman. Sarah felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could they deceive her so thoroughly? The depth of their betrayal felt like a deep wound, one that might never heal. But Sarah knew she needed more than just text messages as proof. Confronting Tom with only a series of messages could lead to denial and accusations of misunderstanding. She needed irrefutable evidence to confront both Tom and Emily. Gathering evidence. Sarah decided to document everything. She became a silent observer, meticulously noting Tom's movements, his meetings with Emily, and any suspicious activities. She began keeping a journal, detailing the times Tom left the house, the duration of his absences, and the vague excuses he provided. She even noted the clothes he wore, particularly if they were the same outfits he had worn on days he claimed to be working late. When Tom mentioned meetings, Sarah discreetly checked the locations he claimed to visit. She would drive by his office to see if his car was there or park a short distance away from restaurants where he said he was meeting clients. On several occasions, she spotted Tom and Emily together, their body language betraying a level of intimacy that confirmed her worst fears. Emotional turmoil. As Sarah gathered evidence, her emotional turmoil intensified. She felt like an intruder in her own life, spying on her husband and best friend. Each new piece of evidence was a dagger to her heart, yet she forced herself to continue. The need for the truth outweighed the pain of discovery. Her behavior at home became more strained. She struggled to maintain a facade of normalcy for the sake of her children. Every smile felt forced, every conversation with Tom a painful charade. She found solace in her journal, where she could pour out her feelings and record the cold, hard facts. The final piece. One evening, Sarah's efforts culminated in undeniable proof. Tom had mentioned a late meeting at the office, but Sarah, driven by a hunch, decided to follow him. She trailed his car at a safe distance, her heart racing with anticipation and dread. Instead of heading downtown, Tom drove to a quiet, upscale hotel on the outskirts of Greenfield. Sarah parked her car a short distance away and watched as Tom and Emily entered the hotel together. This was the final piece of evidence Sarah needed. The sight of them together, entering a hotel under the cover of night, was irrefutable. She took several photos, her hands steady despite the storm of emotions raging within her. The images were clear and damning, a visual record of their betrayal. Conclusion. With her proof in hand, Sarah felt a mix of relief and devastation. The truth she had sought was now laid bare, but it came at a tremendous cost. Her seemingly perfect life in the serene suburbs of Greenfield was shattered. The next steps would be difficult, but Sarah knew she had to confront Tom and Emily. The suburban bliss that had defined her life was gone, replaced by a harsh reality she could no longer ignore. Chapter 4. Confrontation. Preparation for the confrontation. After weeks of meticulous investigation, Sarah Henderson had gathered enough evidence to confront her husband, Tom, about his affair with Emily. She chose a Friday evening for the confrontation, knowing the kids would be at her parents' house for the weekend. This would give her the necessary privacy and uninterrupted time to face Tom without the children being around. Sarah spent the afternoon laying out the evidence on the dining table, arranging it meticulously to leave no room for denial. There were printouts of the intimate texts between Tom and Emily, photographs she had taken of them together, and receipts from the hotel and various other suspicious transactions. Each piece of evidence was a testament to the betrayal she had uncovered. The moment of truth. When Tom walked through the door that evening, he was greeted not by the usual warmth of their home, but by a cold, stern silence. Sarah stood by the dining table, her eyes fixed on him with a mixture of hurt and determination. She pointed to the array of evidence spread out before her. "Care to explain this?" she asked, her voice calm, but laced with controlled fury. Tom's reaction. Tom's face paled as he took in the sight of the damning evidence. His usual confident demeanor crumbled, replaced by a look of sheer panic. He stammered, trying to form excuses, but the words caught in his throat. "Sarah, Don't lie to me, Tom. I know everything." Sarah cut him off, her voice steady but edged with pain. Tom's shoulders slumped, and he crumbled under the weight of his guilt. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen. It just got out of control." The confession. As the truth spilled out, Tom admitted to the affair with Emily. He tried to explain how it started innocently enough, a few friendly conversations that eventually crossed the line. He spoke of feeling neglected, misunderstood, and how Emily had been there to listen. to support him in ways he felt Sarah hadn't. But every word felt like a dagger to Sarah's heart. Tom pleaded for forgiveness, his eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Sarah. I made a terrible mistake, but please, give me a chance to make things right. I'll end it with Emily, I swear." Sarah's response. Sarah's heart was shattered, the pain almost unbearable. She had loved Tom deeply, had built a life and a family with him. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of the affair itself, but because it involved Emily, her best friend. The double betrayal felt like an attack from all sides. "I need time, Tom," she said, her voice breaking, but resolute. "I need time to think and to decide what I want. Right now, I can't even look at you." She turned away, not wanting Tom to see the tears welling up in her eyes. She needed to gather her strength, to formulate a plan for what came next. Forgiveness was not something she could offer at that moment, and forgetting was impossible. She needed to process the betrayal and figure out the future for herself and her children. Seeking solace. That night, Sarah stayed in the guest room, away from Tom. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with thoughts and emotions. The confrontation had been draining, but it was a necessary step. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, filled with hard decisions and painful conversations. In the quiet of the night, Sarah resolved to take things one day at a time. She would seek legal advice, perhaps see a therapist, and most importantly, protect her children from the fallout as much as possible. Her world had been turned upside down, but she was determined to find a way forward, with or without Tom. Conclusion. The confrontation marked a turning point in Sarah's life. She had faced the truth head-on, uncovering the depths of Tom's betrayal and forcing him to acknowledge his actions. While the future remained uncertain, Sarah's resolve was stronger than ever. She would take the time she needed to heal, to think, and to plan. And when the time was right, she would make the decisions that were best for herself and her children. Chapter 5. The Plan for Revenge. Emotional Fallout. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Sarah Henderson's life was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and sadness intermingled, fueling her desire for revenge. Determined to reclaim control and ensure that Tom and Emily paid for their betrayal, she embarked on a meticulously crafted plan. Legal preparations. Sarah's first step was to secure her and her children's future. She consulted with a highly reputable divorce lawyer, known for their aggressive tactics and success in high-stakes cases. During their meetings, Sarah laid out all the evidence she had gathered, ensuring the lawyer had a comprehensive understanding of the situation. The lawyer advised her on the best course of action to gain full custody of the children and secure a significant portion of their assets. They discussed strategies for highlighting Tom's infidelity and the potential impact on his fitness as a parent. Sarah was meticulous in providing every detail, knowing that a strong legal case would be the foundation of her revenge. Financial safeguards. In parallel with the legal proceedings, Sarah took steps to safeguard her financial position. She began discreetly moving money into accounts that Tom couldn't access, ensuring she had funds to support herself and her children in the short term. She also gathered financial records, documenting Tom's earnings and expenditures, preparing for any counterclaims he might make. Undermining Tom's professional reputation. Next, Sarah focused on Tom's professional life. She knew that his career was a source of pride and stability for him, and she aimed to undermine that. Sarah began by gathering information on Tom's workplace, learning about his colleagues and the internal politics of his firm. She discovered a few weak points: projects he had mishandled, conflicts with co-workers, and potential ethical breaches. Sarah started anonymously sending tips to Tom's superiors and key clients, hinting at his unprofessional behavior and infidelity. She crafted her messages carefully, ensuring they were plausible enough to sow doubt, but vague enough to avoid immediate dismissal. The goal was to create a cloud of suspicion around Tom, eroding his professional reputation and making his work environment increasingly hostile. Social manipulation. Sarah also turned her attention to the social fabric of Greenfield. She knew that the community thrived on gossip, and she planned to use that to her advantage. At community events, book clubs, and casual gatherings, she subtly let slip hints about Tom and Emily's affair. She played the role of the heartbroken but strong wife, gaining sympathy from those around her. "I'm not one to gossip, but it's been so hard lately. Did you hear about Tom and Emily? It's been devastating," she would say, her voice filled with feigned vulnerability. The news spread quickly, as she knew it would. Friends and neighbors began to distance themselves from Tom and Emily, their previously sterling reputations now tarnished. Turning friends and neighbors. Sarah's calculated rumors had the desired effect. People who once admired Tom's dedication to his family and Emily's vibrant personality now saw them as deceitful and untrustworthy. Invitations to social events dwindled, and whispers followed them wherever they went. Even at the children's school events, the stares and hushed conversations were palpable. Sarah took satisfaction in watching the social ostracism unfold. She continued to foster relationships with key community members, ensuring that her side of the story remained dominant. Her portrayal of the betrayed wife resonated deeply with many, reinforcing her position and isolating Tom and Emily further. Internal transformation. Throughout this period, Sarah underwent an internal transformation. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was tempered by a sense of purpose and control. Her meticulous planning and execution of her revenge gave her a sense of empowerment. She was no longer a victim, but a strategist, carefully orchestrating the downfall of those who had wronged her. Conclusion. The weeks of planning and executing her revenge were emotionally taxing, but they also provided Sarah with a sense of catharsis. She watched as Tom and Emily's lives began to unravel, the consequences of their actions finally catching up to them. Sarah's legal preparations ensured that she and her children were protected, while her social and professional manipulations eroded the foundations of Tom and Emily's lives. As the chapter closes, Sarah stands at the precipice of a new beginning. Her revenge has set the stage for the next phase of her life, one where she is in control and unafraid to face whatever comes next. The serene suburbs of Greenfield are no longer a place of betrayal and heartbreak, but a battleground where Sarah has emerged victorious. Chapter 6. The Execution, Financial Sabotage. Sarah's plan for revenge began with a precise and calculated financial strike. She knew that controlling the finances would be a crucial first step in destabilizing Tom's life. Over several days, she systematically transferred their joint savings into a separate account that Tom couldn't access. She ensured that the transfers were untraceable and appeared legitimate to avoid any suspicion from Tom. Once the money was secure, Sarah moved on to their credit cards. She cancelled Tom's cards, leaving him without access to their lines of credit. When Tom attempted to use his card and found it declined, it would be the first of many shocks he would face. Sarah took further steps by altering the passwords to their online banking and investment accounts, cutting off Tom's access entirely. Undermining his career. With Tom's financial resources severely restricted, Sarah turned her attention to his career. She had already gathered incriminating information about Tom's unethical behavior and infidelity. Carefully crafting anonymous emails, she sent these to Tom's boss and key figures at his firm. The emails detailed his extramarital affair with Emily, framing it as a clear conflict of interest and a breach of the company's code of conduct. The impact was swift. The firm's management, concerned about the potential scandal and ethical implications, acted decisively. Tom was called into a meeting where he was confronted with the allegations. Despite his attempts to defend himself, the evidence was too damning. He was dismissed from his position immediately, escorted out of the building in a public and humiliating manner. Social ostracism, Sarah's social sabotage, was already in motion. The rumors she had subtly spread about Tom and Emily's affair began to take a heavy toll on their social standing in Greenfield. The once admired couple found themselves the subject of gossip and disdain. Friends who had previously welcomed them with open arms now turned their backs. Invitations to social gatherings ceased, and cold stares replaced warm greetings. At school events, parents whispered behind their backs, and even the children began to feel the effects of the scandal. Tom and Emily's previously perfect social image was in tatters. The isolation was palpable, and the support network they once relied on vanished. Emily's realization. As the social ostracism intensified, Emily began to realize the full extent of the fallout. The affair, once a thrilling escape, now threatened her own reputation and social standing. The whispers and cold shoulders she encountered daily made it clear that her relationship with Tom was no longer tenable. Emily, driven by self-preservation, started to distance herself from Tom. She avoided his calls and stopped visiting his home. The bond they had shared was now a liability, and Emily was determined to cut ties to salvage what was left of her own reputation. The once vibrant and confident woman now lived in fear of further social backlash. Tom's isolation. Tom, now jobless and financially constrained, faced the brunt of Sarah's revenge alone. He was forced to confront the reality of his actions and the devastating impact they had on his life. With Emily withdrawing from him and the community turning hostile, Tom found himself isolated. His pleas for forgiveness and attempts to reconcile with Sarah were met with cold indifference. Sarah's resolve. Throughout this period, Sarah maintained a facade of calm and composure. She continued to manage her household and care for her children, ensuring that their lives remained as unaffected as possible. The satisfaction of seeing her plan come to fruition was tempered by the lingering pain of betrayal, but she remained resolute. Sarah's interactions with the community became a strategic performance. She played the role of the wronged but resilient wife, garnering sympathy and support. Her ability to navigate these social waters ensured that she remained in control of the narrative, further isolating Tom and Emily. Conclusion. The execution of Sarah's plan was both methodical and devastating. By targeting Tom's finances, career, and social standing, she dismantled the foundations of his life. The swift and calculated nature of her actions left Tom reeling, while Emily, recognizing the impending disaster, chose to distance herself. As the chapter closes, Sarah stands as a figure of quiet strength and determination. The serene suburbs of Greenfield have witnessed a dramatic shift in power, with Sarah emerging victorious. The next steps would involve rebuilding her life and ensuring her children's well-being. But for now, she could take a moment to acknowledge the successful execution of her meticulously planned revenge. Chapter 7. The Downfall. Tom's descent. In the aftermath of Sarah's meticulously executed revenge, Tom Henderson's life quickly spiraled into disarray. The consequences of his actions and Sarah's calculated response were now glaringly apparent. Job loss and financial ruin. Tom's dismissal from his high-profile executive position was a devastating blow. He had not only lost his job, but also the sense of identity and security that came with it. Without his income, Tom was unable to maintain his previous lifestyle. His savings had been depleted due to Sarah's strategic maneuvers, and with cancelled credit cards, he faced immediate financial constraints. His financial situation deteriorated rapidly. Bills piled up, and he struggled to manage even basic expenses. The shock of going from a comfortable life to financial instability was overwhelming. Tom was forced to sell many of his personal belongings, including expensive gadgets and luxury items, to make ends meet. New living arrangements. With his finances in tatters, Tom moved out of their spacious suburban home into a small, dingy apartment in a less desirable part of town. The stark contrast between his former luxury and his new modest living conditions was jarring. The apartment was cramped and lacked the amenities he had grown accustomed to. The once cherished home, filled with memories of family life, was now a distant, painful reminder of what he had lost. Social isolation. The social repercussions of his affair and the ensuing scandal were equally severe. The community of Greenfield, once a network of friends and acquaintances, had turned its back on him. Invitations ceased, and he was no longer welcome in the social circles he had once frequented. The whispers and judgments followed him wherever he went. Even in his new neighborhood, he was seen as an outsider, carrying the stigma of his past actions. Tom attempted to reach out to former friends and colleagues, seeking support and understanding, but the damage was done. His reputation had been irrevocably tarnished, and most people were unwilling to re-engage with him, wary of being associated with the scandal. Emily's departure. Emily Turner, who had once been a vibrant and integral part of Tom's life, had also felt the repercussions of their affair. Unable to cope with the community's judgment and the collapse of her own social standing, Emily chose to leave Greenfield. She relocated to a different city, seeking anonymity and a fresh start. Her departure was marked by an abrupt end to her life in Greenfield, as she packed up her belongings and vanished from the scene. The move was both a practical decision to escape the scandal and an emotional one, as she struggled with the fallout of her actions and the loss of her former lifestyle. Sarah's new chapter. Amidst Tom's downfall, Sarah Henderson found herself grappling with a complex mix of emotions. The revenge she had meticulously planned was complete, and while it had provided a sense of justice, it also marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Finding closure. Sarah experienced a strange sense of closure. The meticulous planning and execution of her revenge had allowed her to regain control over her life. The betrayal, while still painful, was now framed by the tangible results of her actions. She felt a bittersweet satisfaction in having addressed the wrongs done to her, but she also recognized the emotional toll it had taken. Focusing on the future. With her immediate concerns addressed, Sarah redirected her focus toward rebuilding her life. Her primary concern was the well-being of her children. She dedicated herself to creating a stable and supportive environment for them, ensuring they felt secure and loved despite the upheaval. Professionally, Sarah channeled her energy into her freelance graphic design business. The work provided not only a financial lifeline, but also a creative outlet and a sense of purpose. She took on new projects, networked with clients, and reinvigorated her business with a renewed sense of focus and determination. Empowerment and self-discovery. The process of taking revenge and navigating through the aftermath had given Sarah a newfound sense of empowerment. She had faced the depths of betrayal and emerged with a strengthened resolve. While she understood that the path ahead would not be without challenges, she felt more capable of handling whatever came her way. Sarah began to explore new interests and activities, engaging in hobbies and pursuits that she had previously neglected. She embraced a sense of independence and self-discovery, using the lessons learned from her ordeal to forge a path toward personal growth. Conclusion: Chapter 7 marks a turning point in Sarah's journey. As Tom's life disintegrates under the weight of his actions, Sarah finds a renewed sense of purpose and empowerment. The saga of revenge has concluded, but the real work of rebuilding and moving forward begins. Sarah's focus on her children, her work, and her own personal growth sets the stage for a future where she can navigate life's challenges with newfound strength and resilience. Chapter 8. Moving Forward. Reflecting on revenge. As Sarah Henderson sat in the quiet of her modest home, the satisfaction of her revenge was beginning to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of emptiness. The emotional high of seeing Tom's life unravel had waned, and she was left with the aftermath of her actions and their impact on her own well-being. The weight of her decisions pressed heavily on her shoulders. Moral ambiguity and emotional toll. Sarah spent hours reflecting on the path she had taken. The detailed plan she had executed with precision had led to Tom's professional and social downfall, and Emily's departure from Greenfield. However, the revenge had come at a cost. Sarah grappled with the moral ambiguity of her actions. The same meticulousness that had ensured her success in revenge also left her questioning whether she had crossed ethical boundaries. The emotional toll was significant. The energy she had invested in orchestrating Tom's downfall had been immense, and it left her drained. The joy she initially felt was replaced by a profound sense of emptiness. The aftermath of revenge was not as fulfilling as she had hoped. The people who had wronged her were now suffering, but Sarah realized that their suffering did not necessarily heal her own wounds. Beginning the healing process. Recognizing the need for personal healing, Sarah took the first steps toward addressing her emotional and psychological well-being. She understood that moving forward required more than just rebuilding her life. It required genuine healing and self-reflection. Therapy for Sarah and her children. Sarah sought therapy for herself, understanding that professional help could provide the guidance and support she needed to process her feelings and navigate her path forward. She found a therapist specializing in post-betrayal trauma and self-esteem issues. In sessions, Sarah discussed the emotional aftermath of her revenge, her feelings of emptiness, and her struggles with guilt and moral conflict. Her therapist helped her explore the underlying issues that led to her pursuit of revenge and guided her toward healthier coping mechanisms. Recognizing the impact of the turmoil on her children, Sarah also arranged for therapy sessions for them. The upheaval in their lives, stemming from the betrayal and the subsequent fallout, had likely affected their emotional and psychological well-being. The children's therapy provided them with a safe space to express their feelings and help them cope with the changes in their family dynamics. Joining a support group. In addition to individual therapy, Sarah joined a support group for individuals who had experienced infidelity. This group offered a space for Sarah to connect with others who had gone through similar experiences. The shared understanding and empathy from group members provided a sense of solidarity and comfort. Through the group, Sarah learned from others' experiences, shared her own story, and found validation for her feelings of hurt and betrayal. Rebuilding her life. With a clearer mind and emotional support, Sarah began the process of rebuilding her life. The journey was incremental, and she approached it one step at a time. Reconnecting with old interests. Sarah re-engaged with hobbies and activities she had once enjoyed but had neglected during the tumultuous period. She took up painting again, a hobby that had always provided her with a sense of peace and creative expression. This reconnection with her passions helped her regain a sense of personal fulfillment. Strengthening relationships. Sarah also made a conscious effort to strengthen her relationships with friends and family. The support she received from loved ones during the crisis was invaluable, and she made an effort to nurture these connections. Regular get-togethers, phone calls, and meaningful conversations helped restore a sense of normalcy and support in her life. Focusing on personal goals. Sarah set new personal goals for herself, focusing on both short-term and long-term aspirations. She redefined her career goals, seeking to expand her freelance graphic design business and exploring opportunities for growth. She also set personal goals related to health and wellness, incorporating regular exercise and mindfulness practices into her routine, finding a new sense of purpose. As time passed, Sarah began to discover a new sense of purpose. Her focus shifted from the past to the future, from revenge to personal growth. The process of healing and rebuilding allowed her to redefine her identity and her aspirations. She started to view her experiences not just as a series of events, but as a catalyst for personal transformation. The challenges she had faced and the lessons she had learned shaped her into a more resilient and self-aware individual. Chapter 9. A New Beginning, Sarah's Emotional and Social Revival. As months passed, Sarah Henderson's life began to stabilize. The tumultuous period of revenge and its aftermath had given way to a more peaceful and balanced existence. Her emotional and mental state had significantly improved, allowing her to focus on building a new life. Reconnecting with old friends. One of Sarah's first steps toward recovery was reconnecting with old friends. The bonds she had with these individuals had been strained during the chaos of her personal crisis, but she reached out to rekindle these relationships. She organized casual gatherings, such as brunches and coffee dates, to catch up and rebuild her social network. These interactions provided a comforting sense of normalcy and support. Friends who had been understanding and supportive during her struggle became an integral part of her renewed social life. Making new friends. In addition to reconnecting with old friends, Sarah actively sought to make new connections. She joined local community groups and attended events that aligned with her interests, such as art classes and book clubs. These activities introduced her to people with similar hobbies and values, allowing her to form new friendships. The process of meeting new people and engaging in social activities contributed to her growing sense of belonging and community. Exploring new relationships. Sarah also began to explore the possibility of dating again. She approached this new phase of her life with cautious optimism. She signed up for a few online dating platforms and attended social mixers organized by friends. Her dating experiences were different from those in the past. She was now more self-aware and clear about her expectations and desires in a relationship. Though her dating life was still in its early stages, Sarah found the experience enjoyable and uplifting. It provided her with a renewed sense of hope and excitement for the future. Focusing on her children. Throughout this period of rebuilding, Sarah's primary concern remained her children's well-being. She was determined to provide them with a sense of stability and love despite the upheaval they had experienced. Sarah made a conscious effort to be present in their lives, engaging in activities that fostered strong family bonds. They spent quality time together through weekend outings, family movie nights, and trips to the park. Sarah also kept an open line of communication with her children, encouraging them to express their feelings and concerns. She worked closely with their therapists to ensure that the emotional impact of the recent changes was addressed. By creating a nurturing environment, Sarah aimed to help her children feel secure and supported as they adjusted to their new life. Tom's continued struggles. In stark contrast to Sarah's positive transformation, Tom Henderson's life remained a struggle. The consequences of his actions continued to cast a long shadow over his existence, new job and financial challenges. Tom had managed to secure a new job, but it was a significant step down from his previous senior executive position. The role was less prestigious, with a lower salary and fewer opportunities for advancement. The adjustment to this new position was humbling and disheartening. Tom found himself grappling with the realities of a diminished professional status and the financial constraints that came with it. The job, though necessary, did little to alleviate his sense of failure and loss. Solitary existence. Tom's personal life was equally challenging. He lived a solitary existence in his small, modest apartment, far removed from the comfort and luxury he had once enjoyed. His isolation was compounded by the strained relationships with his former friends and colleagues. The social circles he had once been a part of were now closed off to him, leaving Tom with limited social interactions and a profound sense of loneliness. Haunted by mistakes. Tom was haunted by the mistakes that led to his downfall. The guilt and remorse over his infidelity and the subsequent impact on his family weighed heavily on him. He found himself reflecting on his actions and the damage they had caused. The lack of forgiveness and reconciliation from those he had wronged left him with a persistent sense of regret and self-reproach. Despite his efforts to move forward, Tom struggled to find peace and redemption. The consequences of his actions were a constant reminder of the choices he had made and the lives he had affected. Chapter 10. Forgiveness and Redemption. The call from Tom. It was a quiet evening at the Henderson home. Sarah had just finished putting her children to bed, tucking them in with soft kisses and reassuring words about tomorrow's adventures. The house was calm, the sort of tranquil silence that comes after a busy day of family activities. As Sarah settled down with a cup of chamomile tea, her phone rang. The caller ID displayed Tom's name. A wave of mixed emotions washed over her. It had been months since they had last communicated, and she wasn't sure what to expect. With a deep breath, she answered the call. Tom's voice came through the line, heavy with weariness and sorrow. He sounded defeated and broken, a stark contrast to the confident, successful man he used to be. His voice trembled as he began to speak, and Sarah could sense the depth of his regret and suffering. Tom's apology. Tom's apology was raw and heartfelt. He started by acknowledging the pain he had caused, not just to Sarah, but to their entire family. "Sarah, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything from you, but I need to apologize. I'm so sorry for what I did. The affair, the lies, the hurt." His words came in a stuttering, broken cadence as he struggled to convey his remorse. He spoke of the overwhelming guilt he felt and the way his mistakes had unraveled his life. "I never imagined how badly I would hurt you or how this would come back to haunt me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't expect it. I just need you to know how deeply sorry I am." His voice was a mixture of shame and hope, as if pleading for some sliver of redemption. Sarah's reflection as Sarah listened to Tom's apology, a surprising calmness settled over her. It had been months since the tumultuous events had unfolded, and her focus had been on rebuilding and moving forward. Yet, hearing Tom's voice and his heartfelt regret made her reflect on her own emotional journey, the burden of resentment. Sarah realized that holding on to anger and resentment had been a heavy burden. It had consumed her thoughts and emotions, feeding a cycle of negativity that affected her well-being. While the process of revenge had provided a sense of justice, it had also left her with unresolved feelings of bitterness. A sense of peace. In that moment, as Tom's words echoed in her mind, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. She recognized that forgiving Tom was not about condoning his actions or forgetting the pain he had caused. Instead, it was about releasing herself from the grip of anger and finding closure. The emotional weight of the past was lifting, and she could see a path forward that was unburdened by past grievances. The act of forgiveness. With this newfound clarity, Sarah made a decision. She chose to forgive Tom, not for his sake, but for her own. Her decision was rooted in the understanding that holding on to her anger was only prolonging her suffering and hindering her ability to fully move on with her life. Telling Tom, Sarah spoke with calm resolution, her voice steady but filled with genuine emotion. "Tom, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for myself. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I need to let go of this anger. I need to move forward." Tom's reaction was one of relief and surprise. The weight of his guilt seemed to lift slightly, though he understood that forgiveness did not erase the past or undo the damage. The call ended with a sense of tentative closure, a moment where both parties acknowledged the pain and began to move toward their own paths of healing. Moving forward, Sarah's continued healing. For Sarah, this act of forgiveness was a significant step in her ongoing healing process. It allowed her to let go of the lingering bitterness and focus on the positive aspects of her life. She continued her therapy, deepening her understanding of herself and her emotional needs. Her relationships with friends and family flourished, and her renewed sense of peace positively impacted her interactions with others. Tom's journey. Tom, though still grappling with the consequences of his actions, took Sarah's forgiveness as a step toward his own redemption. He continued to work on rebuilding his life, facing the daily challenges of his new circumstances with a renewed sense of responsibility. The conversation with Sarah, while not a complete resolution, provided him with a sliver of hope and a reminder that change and redemption were possible.